Alright, we've had one game with Trey Jemison on the Lakers team, and no, that's obviously not enough to evaluate him. He played quite a bit during his Lakers debut, nearly 15 minutes, and that's quite a bit for a guy that didn't even know the playbook quite yet. But what it does tell you is that they're confident in him going forward, they want him within the rotation, and they're trying to move in a different direction. And with that in mind here, what kind of direction is that, and could he be a bigger part of their team going forward, potentially even taking a roster spot from somebody? Yes, he is currently on the roster, but kind of an extension of the roster, being a two-way contract and therefore limited to 50 total games, not being eligible for the postseason, and again, therefore kind of being an extension rather than a full part of their 15-man roster. Though again, that could potentially change. If you'd outplay other guys in their team, mainly being Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, could he actually take their spot on their team, or even apart from that, could he potentially stop them from making a bigger trade for another center, or simply a frontcourt player in general? Obviously a lot to take in there, not something we can answer for one game alone, but those are all questions that they kind of want to have answered, whether they be from Trey Jemison alone or simply from their frontcourt in general, up until the trade deadline. And we're going to talk about how Trey Jemison can affect that. Could he prevent a trade on their team? In a good way, not a bad way. More so from them not needing a trade and him kind of filling that spot for their center rotation. Or take somebody's spot away from them on the roster. We'll talk about that, what he needs to do going forward, and how he might be able to affect and impact the rotation. But before we get too far into it, let's go over our game day picks with Underdog Fantasy, the best way to get in on the NBA action this season. And if you're a new signup, you can pick Victor Wembanyama to have higher than 0.5 points tomorrow night. So yeah, take advantage of that free pick. But then for my picks, for pick number 1, I got Anthony Davis having higher than 0.5 assists during the first quarter. He currently averages about 1.5 assists per game during the first quarter, the most of any quarter for himself, and that's one I tend to hit on fairly often. Then for my second pick, I got LeBron making more than 1.5 3-point shots. The guy's been on a hot streak lately, and I think it will continue again tonight. Then for my third and final pick, I got Chris Middleton having higher than 3.5 assists. But if you're looking to make your own picks, then be sure to check out Underdog Fantasy, and don't forget to use code JSM to get your free pick, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make a deposit. But now getting back to our topic. And again, with Trey Jemison, he'll have a big opportunity going forward and potentially one to make a big impact on their team and their overall rotation. Like I mentioned before, he played about 15 minutes during his debut, and that's quite a bit for a new player. And in that time frame, he grabbed 4 rebounds, did commit 4 fouls, blocked 2 shots, and overall made a solid impact despite not scoring a point or even attempting a single field goal. That's something that he can do that not many other guys in their team actually can do, making an impact without scoring a point or even doing really much in offense in general, but simply being physical around the rim, getting plenty of box outs. I think he led their team in box outs during that game, getting rebounds, setting good screens, overall being a force down low that not really anybody else in their team can replicate. So from that standpoint, he brought something new to their team that nobody else really can do for their team, or at least not consistently. And well, anytime you have a player that brings something that nobody else can really replicate on your team, there definitely is a role for them, even if it is during certain matchups and fairly limited matchups at that. I think that's partially true for Trey Jemison. I think for the most part they'll play him in pretty much every matchup, especially if he can maintain this or improve upon it going forward, which I think or at least hope he will be able to do. But again, there definitely is a role for him, and they are trying to stick to that kind of formula going forward. Playing more physical, being a bit more big, and even including 2 big lineups too. Something that Redick talked about a few days ago, and he stuck to that plan in the first game with Trey Jemison, and likely will going forward as well.
I think first of all, a big body and plays extremely hard. With Christian and what we've asked of him, some because of Jackson's injury, but we have to sort of manage his days. And Trey gives us another body, another physical player. We kind of went away from those 2 big lineups. It's something we did last night. It's something we're going to try to get back to for small stretches of games. It doesn't mean we won't play small ever, but that's something I think where we can get some practice time. We can really work on those small ball looks. So for Trey, I think he's going to have an opportunity at times to be out there with AD. He's going to have an opportunity at times to play solo big, depending on who's available. Obviously, Jackson's our backup center. Not saying he's going to play over Jackson, but getting him in the program was important for us, and we obviously did intel on him. He's high character, high energy, Smart player too, high basketball IQ, super humble. Like we're excited to have him.
However, for Trey Jemison to keep that spot or even build upon that spot, I think it'll come down to two things for him. One of which being rim protection, not only blocking shots, but actually playing good help side defense, being in the right spot in the court, and then being able to play with Anthony Davis or any other big they pair him with within their rotation. And then the other one being rebounding, not simply rebounding in general, but more so contested rebounding. This is something I talked about during my player review on him, what he could bring to their team, and I think the biggest thing does happen to be contested rebounding. The difference between simply getting a rebound and a contested rebound, obviously it kind of sounds like what it is. A contested rebound being a fight for a rebound, but only one guy coming away with it. And for Trey Jemison, he has shown the ability to do that. Last season for Memphis, he led their team in contested rebound percentage, having a 43.6% rate of grabbing contested rebounds. And for their team, that's something he can offer. A combination of good contested rebounding ability and rim protection ability is something that only one other guy on their team offers their team, that being Anthony Davis. So if he could stand out from Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood if and when he would ever get healthy, and Christian Coloco and Armel Traore, both of which he has already stood out more than in my opinion, or at least kind of trending in that direction, then he might be able to take a spot and definitely grab more minutes within the rotation too. And who knows, if Christian Wood never gets healthy, or if Jackson Hayes simply gets outplayed by Trey Jemison, then they both could be at risk of getting cut. Following the trade for Dorian Finney-Smith, and through that trade, they actually lowered their cap number and got further below the second tax apron, now having enough room to cut a player and then replace that player with a different minimum contract player. Therefore, the situation potentially looking like them cutting either Hayes or Wood and then replacing them with Trey Jemison on a standard veteran minimum contract. Not saying that'll happen, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it definitely could happen now, and that's the pressure that Wood and Hayes have on them, and that's actually a good thing in my opinion. I mean, they want that kind of pressure on them. For Christian Wood to be pressured to get back healthy and play better than he did last season, and then for Jackson Hayes to keep improving and not have inconsistent performance like he has had for much of this season, or maybe they'll replace them. Trey Jemison could be that guy for them, simply to motivate guys like Hayes and Wood, or again, maybe to replace them in the future. They could do it, and Hayes and Wood have got to be aware of that and try not to get replaced by him or any other player for that fact. Or even taking that a step further, could Trey Jemison play his way into them not making a trade for another frontcourt player or a center in the future? Well, I'm not sure I go that far. I'd still be monitoring the trade market. I hope they are monitoring the trade market, and I think it would take quite a bit for Trey Jemison to make that happen. Obviously, that would be great for their team, and if he could do that, they'd be very open to it and probably would rethink making a trade, but that's quite a bit down the line here. I think for that to happen, Trey Jemison would have to be their second best rim protector after Anthony Davis, and be that on an every game basis, not being matchup dependent, finding a way to make an impact on every game no matter what the matchup is, whether it be a big team, a small team, or anything in between, finding a way to make an impact, not being matchup dependent, and giving them more than what we think he might on both ends of the court. And let me reiterate and be very clear about this. I'm not saying that will happen, I'm not saying it's a guarantee that'll happen or anything close to it. I'm simply talking about possibilities here and what he might be able to do if the best case scenario work in their favor and really for the favor of Trey Jemison. But again, not saying that's guaranteed to happen, not hyping him up too much here, and not taking anything for granted from one game alone or trying to look into it too much. Simply looking at the scenarios for their team and what they might be looking at with Trey Jemison or simply hoping for with him as well. But with that being said, what do you guys think? How do you think Trey Jemison could or will impact the rotation going forward? Will it simply be a matchup dependent kind of thing? Will he take over somebody's spot like Jackson Hayes, or will it even be a blocking a trade kind of thing, making one obsolete and instead filling that role for their team? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one, and if you enjoyed the video, then I would greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe